Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Math 150 Quantitative Reasoning Mathematics. In the previous video, we looked at 5 common fallacies: appeal to popularity, false cause, appeal to ignorance, hasty generalization, and limited choice. Today, we're going to continue with 5 more reasoning errors. And in these reasoning errors, they basically appear frequently in media, advertising, politics, social media, you name it, the other 5 as well. Okay. Let's jump right in them and then we'll review them at the end. Example number 1: an advertisement shows frightening images and says a policy must pass immediately, but gives no data. Explain how emotion replaces evidence. Okay, so the frightening images, right? And then it says this policy must pass immediately, giving no data. What's the problem? The argument is trying to use fear in order to in order for the acceptance of the claim, right? And politicians do this all the time. Well, agree with immigration, right? They show you all these images of immigration being, terrible, and you know, they're they're bringing drugs in, they're doing this, they're doing that, and then they're forcing you to essentially accept the claim on the basis of these fearful images. Right? That's an appeal to emotion. Instead of providing evidence that the policy actually works, emotion can be relevant to an issue, but emotion by itself does not prove a conclusion. The question can still be what evidence supports that policy, right? Example number 2: a speaker dismisses a budget estimate because the analyst attended an elite university. Why? So explain why the biography does not determine whether the estimate is correct, okay? So we're talking about a budget estimate, but instead of examining the calculations, another person says, well, we shouldn't believe this analyst because they attended an elite university. Does that tell us whether the estimate is correct? No. The analyst's biography does not determine whether the mathematics is correct. So what we should do is examine assumptions, data, calculations, right? And even sources, right? This is what we should examine, not whether or not this person went to an elite university, because I've met many people who have gone to an elite university, and well, I mean, if you challenge their data, then you'll have a much higher probability of refuting their data when you challenge the data, challenge their assumptions, their data, their calculations, their sources, juxtaposed to challenging whether like what school they went to, right? Because many people will do that to you. They'll be like, oh, well, you went to HBCU versus like, oh, you went to Penn State, right? So there's people out there that are like that, that think along these lines rather than actually challenging, assumptions or data or calculations or sources. Okay. Attacking a person instead of the argument, that's a personal attack, right? Some people call this an ad hominem. It's like you're attacking the person rather than their argument, right? All right, here's another problem. A policy is describing an unnecessary, or excuse me, a policy is describing as necessary because it's essential. Okay, a policy is described as necessary because it is essential, and essential because it is necessary. Identify the repeated conclusion. All right. So notice what happened. They're essentially saying, you know, necessary, therefore essential. Okay, that's essentially what they're saying. They're saying necessarily, therefore essential, and essential, therefore necessary. That's basically what their argument is. But no independent evidence was ever provided based on what we can see. So the conclusion is simply repeated in different words. It's like when people say, truth is truth. Well, that doesn't logically follow. Or Your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. That's basically what a circular reasoning is. Because they're basically saying necessary, that therefore essential, essential, therefore necessary, right? That's circular reasoning. You just got to better be able to better articulate what you mean by truth and what you mean by my truth and your truth. Example number 3, asked about civilian causalities, an official responds only by praising not excuse me, only by praising national coverage. Explain why the response does not answer the original question. So someone is asked about civilian casualties, like, hey, well, how many civilians actually died during the war over there in the Middle East? Well, an official responds only by praising national coverage. Well, we think the coverage for we think our media here in the U.S. for covering this issue. Well, you didn't even answer the question, right? So this is a classic diversion, right? So the response may discuss an important topic, but it doesn't answer the question of what was asked. I mean, this praising national coverage, that's fine, but notice how they didn't even address this part. Okay. Because the original problem was, or the original statement or question was asked, hey, how about civilian casualties? Right. And then they want to talk about national coverage. You see how these two things are mutually exclusive? Okay. So this is called a diversion. Okay. They're basically trying to redirect you away from the truth to the actual reality. Okay. Did the response actually address the original question? And the answer is no. That's a diversion. Okay. A critic asks for an audit of military spending, and a reply says that the critic wants the nation defenseless, right? This is a reasonable request. Hey, we need to audit the military. The military is spending tons of taxpayer dollars for various things. And then so they say, well, how could you want to look at the budget? Do you not care about the defense of our nation? Right? That begs the question. That notice how they're trying to weaken this and replace it with this. That's what a straw man is. Because the actual position is audit military spending. Okay. So the position is audit military spending, not eliminate national defense, right? We need a national defense. Every country needs a national defense. But this has nothing to do with this. You can still audit the military spending to make sure the military or the U.S. government is allocating for all those funds and is not um, extortions. It's not extorting money, stealing from the American people, etc., and or giving unnecessary things, unnecessary amounts of money to unqualified positions or people or etc. Not whether or not we need a defense. Okay. So a straw man changes someone's position into something easier to attack. Okay, so a common mistake, a celebrity or AI system endorses a claim without sources. Explain why authority alone is not enough and identify what evidence should be verified. Okay, so should we accept it simply because of who said it, right? A celebrity or an AI system? The answer is no, right? Whether it's a celebrity or AI system. Authority by itself is not enough. Okay, so always check. Um, what's the source? Okay, what's the source? What evidence? Okay, um, can the evidence be independently verified? Okay, a person or a system, right? Makes no difference. Making the statement does not replace the evidence. It doesn't matter who it came from, AI or a celebrity. We need to verify it. Okay. So, in closing, remember today's 5 fallacies. Today's five fallacies were appeal to emotion. That's when people attempt to use fear, uh, even pity, or anger instead of giving you evidence for a claim. Personal attack, that's when someone attacks you rather than your argument. Circular reasoning is when the conclusion is essentially being supported by itself. There's no real argument being made. Diversion, that's when someone wants to direct your attention to somewhere else. You can say, well, hey, look, that car hit the other car. And they're like, well, hey, did you check your phone? I think we have class tomorrow. Right. But hey, I'm talking about this car over here. They're trying to direct your attention away from the event onto something else. A straw man argument is basically when someone misrepresents an argument that you are making and then changing it to make it much weaker so that they can refute the weaker version of your argument. Okay. All right. So thank you again for watching. And in the next video, we'll shift from arguments into something called sets and Venn diagrams. And again, thank you for watching.